Thank you for joining the Fire Code Safety Training. This is a presentation by TVDSB's Human Resource Services Health and Safety Department, Learning Support Services, and Facility Services for delivery to TVDSB employees. This training will help you understand the Ontario Fire Code, how it applies to our facilities, and what your responsibilities are. The Ontario Fire Code requires the establishment and implementation of a fire safety plan for buildings and schools. The intent of the Fire Safety Plan is to provide simple basic emergency procedures for the safe evacuation of building occupants, ensure effective utilization of building fire protection systems during an emergency, provide instruction and guidance on other matters of fire safety, and ensure properly scheduled maintenance of fire protection systems as required by the Ontario Fire Code. Fire routes must have approved fire route signage. Fire access routes must be maintained and accessible to the fire department vehicles at all times. This includes being clear of other vehicles. Extra diligence is required during construction or renovations, as the placement of vehicles, equipment, and supplies can block fire routes. Vehicles that are in approved fire route is subject to ticketing by local bylaw officers. If there is no agreement in place for ticketing, the building owner may also be charged under the Ontario Fire Code. Non-fire separation doors, for example, classroom doors, shall be such that the door can be readily opened to permit egress without requiring keys, special devices, or specialized knowledge of the door opening mechanism. The OFC requires exits to be maintained free of obstructions, which could hinder evacuation. This includes keeping stairwells free of combustibles. Temporarily storing combustible materials in stairwells is a contravention of the Ontario Fire Code. Stairwells must be clear so the space can be used as a safe haven for occupants during an emergency. Hallways offer space for materials such as coat racks, display cabinets, or additional seating. New coat racks in corridors must be approved by Facility Services. Display cabinets must comply with the Ontario Building Code to ensure compliance with regulations affecting accessibility. When the building is at lower occupancy, chairs may be placed in the corridor on special event evenings, such as parent-teacher interviews. During occupied times, corridors serving classrooms shall not be used for the placement or storage of combustible items such as desks, chairs, furniture, stationery supplies, etc. If a student must be removed from the rest of the class and their desk is placed in the hallway, they must be supervised. Students should be discouraged from congregating in the halls for long periods of time, example lunchtime. 1 or 2 non-combustible benches for visitors are permitted to be placed adjacent to the administration area, and non-combustible lockers and existing coat racks may be placed in the hallways, provided these items do not reduce the required width of access to exit. Wooden benches or fabric-covered furniture shall be tested as per NFPA 705. All staff should be aware of the space they are in, and if there are obstructions in the hallway, stairwells, or other locations, they should report them for cleanup if they are not responsible for the area. Designated fire doors shall not be blocked or wedged open at any time. This includes doors to hazardous classrooms and boiler room doors. A hazardous classroom is a classroom associated with high-risk activities, for example, art, tech, and science rooms. Fire separation doors may be held open when equipped with a magnetic hold-open device, or where addressed in the approved fire safety plan. Someone must be assigned to ensure they are closed when the fire alarm is activated. This person is listed on the fire safety plan. After school hours, while the building has a greatly reduced occupant load, custodial staff may temporarily block fire doors open for cleaning only. Doors in corridors, including washrooms, where it is necessary for safety reasons to keep doors open, must have magnetic hold-open devices installed under a building permit. Doors that have been approved in the fire safety plan to be left open are to be supervised at all times. To reduce the speed the fire is spread, and to ensure safe evacuation of all occupants, only 20% of the wall space is permitted to have combustible wall coverings and teaching materials on it. Combustible items cannot be placed closer than 18 inches to the ceiling. No combustible materials are to be strung or attached to the ceiling or doors. Schools shall conduct 6 total evacuation fire drills each year. 3 of these drills will occur in the fall, and 3 will occur in the spring term. The first fall term evacuation drill should be held early in the school year to ensure that students are familiar with proper evacuation procedures. Fire drills shall be held during operating hours when the school is occupied by students. it is encouraged that schools practice alternate exits during these drills. For example, you may place pylons in front of the regular emergency exit doors so the building occupants have to use the alternate exits. This way you can see how well the alternate exits are working and implement any changes necessary to make fire drills as efficient as possible. Debriefing to evaluate the fire drill is mandatory to ensure any deficiencies are corrected. Non-school TVDSB facilities must conduct fire drills annually, and daycare centers must conduct fire drills monthly. You have discovered a fire. The next steps you take are critical. First, pull the fire alarm. You want to ensure that the fire department is on its way. Next, evacuate the students. Do not use the elevators and close the doors when you leave the area. Remember, in the event of an activation of a fire alarm, the school shall be fully evacuated by all occupants. Gather in a prearranged meeting location away from the building. Take a roll call to ensure everyone has evacuated. Do not return to the building until a fire official has declared it safe. The only exception to these instructions is when a test is performed and students and staff are notified immediately prior to the activation of the alarm. Evacuation is not required. Special emergency procedures, including provisions for evacuating persons requiring assistance, shall be prepared, approved, and implemented in case of fire. Assigned staff shall be available on notification of a fire emergency to fulfill their obligation to evacuate persons requiring assistance in case of fire. Persons requiring assistance to evacuate are not to be placed or staged in classrooms to await rescue by firefighters. Approved evacuation staging areas may be utilized to assemble persons requiring assistance while preparing for evacuation. The fire safety plan and school emergency procedures are to be reviewed when there are any changes to the school population or structure that may affect the ability of persons requiring assistance to evacuate in case of fire. Occupant loads shall be strictly adhered to for all portions of the school as per fire code regulations. In cases where outside groups or organizations are using a portion of the school for activities, they shall be clearly advised of the occupant load for the space that they are using, and of their responsibility to ensure that the posted occupant numbers are adhered to. The school board has the ultimate responsibility to ensure that all groups adhere to the occupant loads at all times. The occupant load cards shall be prominently posted in all large assembly areas, such as gymnasiums, auditoriums, and theaters. All users of school facilities after hours shall be provided with emergency and fire safety instruction and shall be informed of their responsibilities prior to their use of the school by the board office signing off on the agreement. Emergency procedures, including emergency contacts 911, will be posted in areas used after hours. Approved staff as identified by the fire safety plan, for example, the administrator or custodian, must be in the building at all times if the occupancy of outside users is 60 persons or more. TVDSB supervisory staff shall be available on notification of a fire emergency, but not necessarily in the building at all times. The Ontario Fire Code states that in case of an offense, an individual and/or the corporation may be subject to a fine and/or a term of imprisonment. If there is a fire, the number one priority is that occupants of the building are able to get out safely, and the fire department must be contacted. If the fire is contained to a small area such as a wastebasket, and you choose to use a portable fire extinguisher, you should never let the fire get between you and your exit. Also make sure to stay low, where the air is cooler and cleaner. Never fight a fire alone, and remember, fighting a fire is a voluntary act. It is imperative that the correct fire extinguisher is selected, which is dependent on the nature of the fire. Class A, B, C, and D fires differ on the type of fuel sources. As a result, different types of extinguishing agents are required. No extinguisher will fight all 4 classes of fire. However, some extinguishers can be used on 2 or 3 different fire classes. As a result, extinguishers should be used for the type of fire they are rated for. Tri-class or multi-purpose dry chemical fire extinguishers may be used to smother Class A, B, and C fires. A Class A fire is characterized by the burning of wood-based products, cloth, paper, rubber, and certain plastics. Water or a dry chemical, in the form of a multi-purpose dry chemical extinguisher, may be used to extinguish this type of fire. A Class B fire is characterized by the burning of flammable liquids, such as gases, greases, and petroleum products. This type of fire can be fought with AFFF, carbon dioxide, or multi-purpose dry chemical extinguishers. A Class C fire is a fire that involves live electrical equipment. This type of fire is extinguished with a carbon dioxide or dry chemical extinguisher. Class D fires are characterized by the burning of combustible metals, such as sodium, potassium, and magnesium in their elemental form. If you are in a science classroom or laboratory and you have sodium, potassium, and magnesium in its elemental form, please ensure you have a bucket of sand available to extinguish the fire. Remember PASS, using the acronym PASS to remind yourself of the steps to follow when using an extinguisher. First, you must pull the pin out. Then you must aim the nozzle at the base of the fire. Then you will squeeze or pump the handle and sweep from side to side at the base of the flame. A fire extinguisher can only be used to fight one fire. If it was used, even for a few seconds, please contact facility services for a replacement. Please watch the video on the next slide to review the steps in using a portable fire extinguisher.
Hi, my name is Kelly Webb. I'm with the Asheville Fire Department, and today we're here to talk about the use of portable fire extinguishers. We're going to discuss how to use them and when to use them, and then hopefully if you're ever put in that situation that you might encounter a fire, you might feel a little more comfortable using the portable fire extinguisher. Now, depending on what kind of fire you encounter will actually determine which type of extinguisher you use. But to make things more simple, we're just going to talk about the fact that there is a portable fire extinguisher called a multi-purpose extinguisher. That multi-purpose extinguisher will cover pretty much any type of fire that you would encounter. Now, what I teach you today is not just for business purposes, but it's also for your personal life. So, the things that we talk about not only would help you in your day-to-day activities at work, but if you're out shopping, if you're at a child care center or something like that, pretty much whatever fire extinguisher is hanging on the wall will put out any fire you would encounter in that situation. Please do understand that the portable fire extinguisher is for the beginning stage of a fire, meaning if you encounter the fire within the first few minutes of it, that you could probably put it out with that fire extinguisher. But if a fire has been burning for 5 or 10, 15 minutes, and you're wondering whether or not that fire extinguisher will put it out, it probably won't. So if you're ever in doubt, please just get out. Your safety is definitely our first concern, and we want you to leave the firefighting to the firefighters. I make the joke that you do not see firefighters running into a burning building with portable fire extinguishers because that's not what they are designed to do. So please understand that it is for the very beginning stage of a fire. For instance, if you encounter a trash fire, child playing with matches, or perhaps you've started a fire on the top of a stove, that's when you want to be able to grab your portable fire extinguisher and put the fire out. Otherwise, like I said, your safety is our first concern. Please get out, call 911, and leave the firefighting to the firefighters. Now, fire extinguishers pretty much all look the same. They're this beautiful red color. We have a handle, that's what you can carry it by, and it's actually the top portion of the handle, the trigger, that will emit the agent. They all have a safety pin in there, and that safety pin is tied on by a zip tie, and that's so that somebody doesn't accidentally lose that safety pin or a child tampers with the extinguisher, accidentally setting it off. They have some type of a nozzle or hose depending on the size of the extinguisher. They all should have a gauge, and this gauge is very important because the gauge is going to let you and me know whether or not this extinguisher is ready to use. If the gauge shows that the yellow arrow is in the green area, meaning it's charged and ready to go, then as far as you and I know that this is ready and it can be used. Otherwise, if you notice that the yellow arrow has dropped below the green, that means the extinguisher has lost charge for whatever reason and cannot be used. So please, if you ever notice an extinguisher that the yellow arrow has dropped out of the green, get it off the wall immediately, call maintenance, call whoever might be in charge of that extinguisher, and have them replace it immediately. If you leave it on the wall, the chance that somebody might need to grab it and use it is putting them in a high risk. So please. And if you ever notice that your personal extinguisher has lost a charge, you can look in the phone book under fire extinguisher companies. Several companies can assist you with recharging your extinguisher. A lot of the ones in businesses will have a tag on them. This means that annually a fire extinguisher company is coming out and checking this extinguisher out, making sure it's charged and ready to go. So annually, somebody is physically touching this extinguisher and making sure it's in good working condition. But it would be helpful if you ever notice anything wrong with your extinguisher that you notify, somebody that can get that fixed immediately. We actually teach an acronym that helps you remember how to use the extinguisher. It's very simple, and the word is PASS. PASS stands for pull, aim, squeeze, and sweep. PASS. First thing that you want to do is pull this safety pin out. This extinguisher will never work until you pull this pin out. Be sure you're not depressing the top portion of this handle at the same time, because you're just pushing and pulling against yourself. So pull this pin out and discard it. You do not need the pin. Then you're going to aim the nozzle. You always want to aim at the base of a fire. It's very important that you understand what the base of the fire is, because even though flames may be coming up out of that fire, out of the base of the fire, you can knock those back, but until you get the agent on the actual base of the fire, it will not be extinguished. So please understand that if you have a trash can that's on fire, that something inside of it is on fire, flames may be coming out of that trash can and you can knock it back, but until you get that agent inside that trash can, the fire is not actually going to go out. So be sure that you always aim at the base of the fire. So pull, aim, squeeze. You're going to squeeze this trigger. It will break a seal on the canister and the agent will be pushed out. Pull, aim, squeeze, and then we ask everybody to sweep so that you're sure that you cover the whole base of that fire. You want to be sure that you don't get tunnel vision, spray in one spot, which could easily spread the fire side to side. You want to keep a distance of about 8 to 10 feet when you encounter a fire and you're going to use your fire extinguisher. And that's because you never know how much pressure is inside the extinguisher, how you're going to react, or how the fire might react. So if you start a good distance of 8 to 10 feet away, start spraying, then you can work yourself up to that fire as you get a little more comfortable. You always want to leave your back to an exit, and this is very important. Fire grows very rapidly. It can actually grow 7 times itself in 1 minute. So if you think about the time that it takes you, once you've discovered a fire, to find your extinguisher, to call 911, several minutes could have gone by. You want to be sure that you don't get overwhelmed. You need to keep your back to an exit. If that fire gets out of control, then you can get out. I highly recommend that you familiarize yourself with where the extinguishers are located throughout your building, wherever you work. And also, if you do have one at your house, I highly recommend that you go home tonight, pull it to the front of your cabinet, make sure that it's ready to be used. It needs to be easily accessible and readily available at all times.
Most children have a fascination with fire. Campfires, sparklers, and candles can be a fun part of childhood. However, the truth is there is no safe level of involvement with fire for children. If you know of a child who is playing with or setting fires, there is a fire safety prevention program available through your local fire department. Please contact your local fire department to arrange for a fire educator to attend your school and promote and teach fire safety. In addition to this, fire trucks and crews may be available to attend your school for a fire truck tour and display. In closing, know the location of exits and fire alarm pull stations and maintain clear access to fire protection equipment. Know the correct building address. Never hesitate to call your local fire department. Whenever you need emergency assistance, dial 911. Never silence or reset the fire alarm until the fire department gives approval. Keep exits, corridors, and stairwells clear at all times. Keep fire doors and doors to stairways closed at all times. At no time should doors be chained. Report any unsafe conditions to supervisory staff. Participate in fire drills. In order to avoid fire hazards and unsafe conditions in the building, all staff must refrain from unsafe cooking practices. In interest of fire safety, personal cooking appliances of any nature should not be incorporated into instructional spaces. Ensure occupant load in all school areas is not exceeded. Refrain from using unsafe electrical equipment and wiring. Do not permit the accumulation of combustible materials in areas that would constitute a fire hazard. Store and use flammable and combustible liquids and gases in small quantities and only in approved containers and locations. Promptly remove all combustible waste material from areas where waste is placed for disposal. TVDSB would like to thank the London Fire Department for the information they've provided for this presentation. If you have any questions with the information that's been presented to you, please speak to your supervisor. Please ensure you submit receipt of this training presentation in your employee portal.